AITA for refusing to let my brother's girlfriend stay at my house after she insulted my cooking. I, 32F, live in a small but cozy apartment in the city, and I've always loved hosting. I'm the kind of person who enjoys cooking, decorating for holidays, and making sure everyone feels welcome. My brother, Jake, 35M, has been dating his girlfriend, Lauren, 29F, for about a year. From the start, Lauren and I have had a somewhat rocky relationship, mostly because she can be very critical and has a biting sense of humor. Jake tends to brush it off, but I've noticed she can sometimes be intentionally harsh. Last weekend, Jake asked if Lauren could stay over at my apartment for a couple of nights. He explained that their apartment was being fumigated and they didn't have anywhere else to go. I hesitated at first because of past experiences, but I ultimately said yes. I figured that a couple of nights wouldn't be a big deal, and I wanted to be supportive of my brother. On the first evening, I decided to make a homemade dinner. I'm not a professional chef, but I love experimenting in the kitchen. I made a roast chicken with roasted vegetables and a homemade dessert. When I served the meal, Lauren immediately wrinkled her nose and said, "Are you seriously going to serve this? It smells weird." I tried to brush it off and said, "It's just the herbs. It's a new recipe I'm trying." She took a bite and then loudly proclaimed, "Wow, this is actually really dry. Did you forget to baste it?" Honestly, I don't know how Jake even eats this stuff. I was stunned. I pride myself on my cooking, and I try to make meals that are comforting and delicious. I try to laugh it off, saying, "Well, I'm still learning. At least the dessert should make up for it." Lauren didn't even touch the dessert and went on to comment on every little thing. The presentation, the seasoning, the way the vegetables were cut. She kept saying things like, "I don't understand why people eat like this," and "I could never eat plain vegetables without sauce." I tried to stay polite, but I could feel myself getting upset. Jake noticed my discomfort and whispered that she was just joking. I told him I didn't find it funny. The tension at the table made the rest of the evening awkward, and I found myself retreating to my room afterward. The next day, Lauren complained about my apartment. She said it was too cluttered and kind of old-fashioned, and remarked that my furniture was cheap-looking for someone who supposedly has a good job. I usually take pride in my home, and this felt like a direct attack. I explained that my apartment was cozy and personal, and that I liked things the way they were. She replied, "Well, I guess some people are okay with mediocrity." By the second night, I decided I couldn't continue to host someone who treated me with such disrespect. I told Jake privately that I didn't feel comfortable having Lauren stay over anymore. He seemed frustrated and argued that I was overreacting. He said, "She's just joking, and you're taking it too seriously. We're literally just crashing here for a night." I explained that a night of constant criticism and backhanded insults was not something I could tolerate, even for my brother. Jake was upset and called Lauren to ask her to leave. Lauren responded angrily, saying that I was unnecessarily dramatic and that I shouldn't let small things bother me. She also accused me of being petty and controlling. Jake seemed torn because he didn't want to upset Lauren, but he also didn't want to make me feel unwelcome in my own home. After a tense discussion, Lauren left, but Jake was still upset with me. The next day, he texted me saying that I had been unreasonable and that I had ruined a perfectly good visit. He implied that I should have ignored Lauren's comments and let it slide for the sake of family harmony. I replied that I couldn't compromise my self-respect and that hosting should not come with verbal abuse. He hasn't spoken much since then and is avoiding visiting me, saying he doesn't want tension. I feel justified in standing up for myself, but I also feel bad that this caused a rift between my brother and me. I know Lauren can be abrasive, but I'm wondering if I overreacted by asking her to leave and refusing to host them. I've hosted plenty of friends and family before, and I've never had someone insult my cooking or my home so directly. At the same time, I don't want to be seen as the difficult sibling. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother's girlfriend stay after she insulted my cooking in my home. I thought it was reasonable to set boundaries, but now I'm questioning whether I should have just tolerated it for a night. This has really shaken my confidence, and I'm unsure if I handled the situation the right way. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious. When do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to let my sister move back in after she broke up with her boyfriend. I, 33F, live in a 3-bedroom apartment in the city with my husband, Alex, 35M, and our 2 children, Mia, 6, and Ethan, 4. A couple of weeks ago, my younger sister, Natalie, 29F, called me in a panic. She had just broken up with her boyfriend of 3 years and was suddenly without a place to stay because she had been living with him. She asked if she could move in with us temporarily until she found her own apartment. I was caught off guard. In the past, I have helped Natalie when she had emergencies, like picking her up after car trouble or letting her stay for a night or 2 if she was locked out of her apartment. But this was different. She was asking to move in indefinitely for an undetermined period, and it was immediately stressful to me. Our apartment is already busy with 2 young kids, and I worry about the logistics and the emotional environment if someone else moves in during an already hectic time. I explained my concerns to her. I told her that we would be happy to help for a night or 2, maybe even a week, but we cannot accommodate her for an extended period. She became emotional and said she had no other options. She tried to guilt me by reminding me of all the times I had helped her in the past and how I always say family comes first. She said that if I cared about her, I would make space for her. I offered to help her in other ways, like assisting with temporary Airbnb rentals, helping her search for an apartment, or even contributing a small amount toward a deposit. She rejected all of these options, insisting that they were impractical and that there's no place like home. She also said that Alex would surely understand, even though I hadn't even asked him yet. I was frustrated because I felt like she was assuming my consent without respecting my household's needs or boundaries. When I finally talked to Alex about it, he agreed that having Natalie move in indefinitely would be difficult. He was worried about privacy, routines with the kids, and the general chaos that would come from adding another adult who had just ended a long-term relationship. He suggested that maybe she could stay for a few nights if absolutely necessary, but not long-term. I conveyed this to Natalie. I told her that we could help her with a short-term stay, but she could not move in indefinitely. She became upset and said that I was cold and unsympathetic and that I was putting my convenience ahead of her well-being. She also accused me of being unwilling to support her during a difficult time, implying that I don't value family enough. The argument escalated when she started messaging me multiple times a day, trying to pressure me. She brought up past favors, saying I owe her for all the times I helped her with rent, transportation, and other emergencies. She said that if I truly loved her, I would make room for her and help her get back on her feet. I tried to explain that helping does not mean compromising my family's space and well-being, but she dismissed my concerns, saying I was overreacting and being selfish. Some friends have weighed in, and their opinions are divided. Some say I should bend the rules for family, that helping her through a crisis is what sisters do. Others say I am right to protect my household, and that supporting someone does not mean allowing them to take over your life. I feel torn because I want to help her, but I also want to maintain boundaries that preserve my family's stability and routine. I also worry about the impact on my kids. Mia and Ethan are used to a certain routine, and adding another adult who's going through emotional distress could disrupt their schedule, cause stress, and potentially create tension in the household. I also worry about my own mental health. Natalie is very emotional, and staying in a new apartment after a breakup is a stressful time for her, but having her in our home might add to my stress instead of helping anyone. I've tried repeatedly to find a compromise, short-term stay, helping with housing searches, contributing financially to temporary accommodations, or even spending extra time with her to provide support outside the house. She refuses all of it. She insists that living with us is the only acceptable solution. Alex has been supportive and agrees with me, saying we can help in ways that don't involve her moving in. However, he is worried that this conflict might permanently strain my relationship with Natalie. My parents are also involved. They called and said I should make space for her because family should be willing to sacrifice but they haven't offered to help Natalie themselves. I feel like I am being painted as the villain, even though I'm offering tangible support in ways that don't compromise my household. I want to help her emotionally and practically, but I also have to protect the well-being of my immediate family. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister move back in after she broke up with her boyfriend, even though she has no other place to stay and insists that family should always step in. AITA for refusing to let my best friend move in after she lost her apartment. I, 29F, have been friends with Sarah, 28F, since college. We've always been close, supported each other through major life events, and shared a lot of personal struggles. I consider her like a sister, and I genuinely care about her. That being said, I also know her personality and habits very well, which include being messy, impulsive, and somewhat financially irresponsible. Over the years, I've tried to help her without enabling bad habits. For example, I've occasionally lent her small amounts of money for emergencies, helped her navigate tough situations at work, and given her advice about budgeting, but I've always drawn a line when it comes to long-term financial or logistical responsibility for her. About a month ago, Sarah's apartment lease ended, and she was unable to renew it due to financial difficulties. She had lost her job a few months prior and had been relying on savings that quickly ran out. She called me in a panic, saying she had nowhere to go and asked if she could move in with me temporarily while she figured things out. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment that I rent with my partner, Alex, 30M. Our apartment is small, and while I have some space for guests occasionally, I knew that having Sarah live with us long-term would create tension, disrupt our routines, and add stress to an already busy household. I told her I wanted to help, but I could not have her move in. I offered alternatives. I could help her find a short-term rental, contribute to temporary accommodations like an Airbnb, assist her in job hunting, or lend a small amount to cover a security deposit for a new place. Sarah insisted that none of these options would work and that moving in with me was the only viable solution. She emphasized that it would only be temporary and that she would leave as soon as she found a job. When I refused, Sarah became upset. She accused me of being selfish and unsupportive, saying that a real friend would help in her time of need. She also implied that I cared more about my comfort than our friendship. I explained that my decision wasn't about not wanting to help her, but about the practical implications of having her move in. Our small apartment, my partner's routine, our budget, and my need for personal space and mental well-being. I also reminded her that I was still willing to help in ways that didn't involve living arrangements, but she dismissed these solutions as insufficient. Over the following week, Sarah began pressuring me more. She sent multiple messages per day, sometimes calling repeatedly, explaining how stressful her situation was and implying that I could make it better by letting her move in. She also began guilt-tripping me by referencing our friendship, saying that I was turning my back on her when she needed me most. I tried to set firm boundaries, telling her that moving in was not an option and that I was offering other forms of support. She became defensive and even tried to argue that she was family in all but blood, insisting that family helps each other no matter what. Things got more complicated when some mutual friends weighed in. A few of them criticized me, saying I should just make the sacrifice because she's a close friend and clearly in crisis. Others told me I was justified, pointing out that having her move in would be disruptive and stressful, and that it is reasonable to set boundaries even for people we care about. The mixed feedback has left me feeling guilty and unsure if I'm in the wrong. Sarah eventually found a friend willing to let her stay temporarily, but she continues to message me frequently, venting about her difficulties and implying that I could have done more. I continue to offer advice, help with job applications, and small financial support when possible, but she seems dissatisfied with anything short of moving in. I've tried explaining that my refusal does not mean I don't care about her or her well-being, but she perceives it as abandonment. I am stuck in a difficult position. I want to help Sarah and support her through this tough time, but I also have responsibilities to my household, partner, and own mental health. Allowing her to live with us would create stress and tension that could negatively impact everyone involved. I have tried to compromise by offering alternative forms of support, but she has rejected them and continues to guilt me. So, AITA for refusing to let my best friend move in after she lost her apartment. Even though she feels abandoned and some mutual friends think I should just help her, I feel like I'm trying to support her in ways that are sustainable and healthy for both of us. But she and some people view my actions as selfish. I want to maintain our friendship and help her get back on her feet, but I also need to protect my own space, routine, and mental well-being, and I'm unsure if standing firm on these boundaries makes me the villain. AITA for refusing to let my sister's children stay in my house after she went through a breakup. I, 33F, have always been close with my younger sister, Emily, 29F. We grew up in a small town, shared a lot of friends, and have generally supported each other through thick and thin. Over the years, though, our lifestyles have diverged quite a bit. I live in a modest 3-bedroom apartment in the city, work a stable job in marketing, and enjoy quiet weekends with my partner, Alex, 35M. Emily, on the other hand, has been more spontaneous and chaotic in her approach to life. She's a single mom of 2 kids, Liam, 8M, and Sophie, 5F, and has often relied on family to help out when things get difficult. She's always been warm and caring, but her decision-making hasn't always been the most practical. About 6 months ago, Emily's long-term boyfriend of 5 years suddenly left her. I could see how devastated she was, and naturally, I offered emotional support. She stayed with me for a couple of nights immediately after it happened, which I didn't mind. I figured it was temporary, and I wanted to help my sister during a rough patch. But then things started getting more complicated. Emily began asking if she could leave Liam and Sophie with me for a little while she sorted out her living situation. The first time, she promised it would just be a weekend. I agreed, but it turned into 3 days, and I found myself juggling my own work schedule while caring for her kids. I was exhausted, but managed to get through it. I tried to set boundaries the next time she asked. I told her I could watch the kids occasionally, but I couldn't commit to long stretches or last-minute drop-offs. She seemed upset, but said she understood. Over the next few months, the requests increased. She asked if the kids could stay during weekdays while she looked for a new apartment or when she had job interviews. Sometimes she asked with only a few hours' notice. I tried to be accommodating, but my patience was wearing thin. I value my quiet space, my routine, and my relationship with Alex, and having 2 energetic children in my apartment disrupted that balance. Alex, who has been extremely patient, began expressing frustration as well. He's supportive of Emily, but not at the expense of our own home life. About 2 weeks ago, Emily called me crying and told me she had no place for the kids because her apartment lease ended earlier than she expected and her parents were out of town. She asked if Liam and Sophie could stay with me for just a week. I explained calmly that I could not accommodate them for an entire week. I offered to help her look for temporary childcare options, like a local daycare or a trusted babysitter network, but she became visibly upset. She accused me of not caring about her or the kids and claimed I was being selfish. I tried to explain that I loved her and the kids, but I have my own responsibilities, my own job, and my own mental health to consider. I reminded her that I had already helped her multiple times over the past months, often at a significant inconvenience to my own life. I suggested she could call her parents, her friends, or even reach out to other relatives for temporary assistance. She refused to listen and left the conversation abruptly, saying she would figure something out, but clearly harboring resentment. Since then, our relationship has been tense. Emily has stopped returning my calls and texts. I've received passive-aggressive messages from her accusing me of being an uncaring sister and a bad aunt. Some mutual friends have reached out, expressing that they think I should be more accommodating because Emily is going through a hard time. I understand that she is struggling, but I also feel that repeatedly allowing her children to stay for extended periods, especially at short notice, is not sustainable or healthy for me or my partner. I've spent a lot of time reflecting on my feelings. I genuinely care for Emily and her children, but I also need to maintain my boundaries. I'm not a daycare service, and it feels wrong to be shamed for prioritizing my own home, my relationship, and my mental health. I want to be supportive in ways that are manageable, like taking the kids for a few hours on weekends or helping her connect with resources, but I can't keep hosting them for extended periods. I share my perspective with a few close friends, and the feedback was split. Some say I'm being cold and should prioritize family, especially since Emily has no immediate support right now. Others say I am entirely justified and that maintaining boundaries is crucial, particularly when the requests have become frequent and demanding. I keep replaying the conversations in my head, wondering if I could have handled it differently, but I honestly feel like I have been as generous as I can reasonably be. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my sister's kids stay with me for extended periods, even though she is struggling after a breakup. I want to support her, but I also need to live my life without feeling guilty or constantly overwhelmed. AITA for refusing to let my brother move in with me after he lost his job and his apartment. I, 35M, have a younger brother, David, 31M, who has always been impulsive and somewhat reckless with money. Growing up, he was the adventurous, carefree one, and I was the cautious, responsible sibling. Over the years, I've helped him out when necessary, loaning him money for emergencies, letting him crash on my couch for short periods, and giving advice on budgeting, but I've always had to draw firm boundaries to protect my own stability. 2 months ago, David lost his job. He had been working in a small startup, and they suddenly went under due to financial troubles. Shortly after, he received an eviction notice because he had fallen behind on rent. He called me in a panic, saying he had nowhere to go and asked if he could move in with me until he got back on his feet. I live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in a city with very high rent. While I have a spare room that I use as an office, I knew that having David live with me long-term would be extremely stressful, both financially and logistically. I explained to David that I could not have him move in permanently. I offered alternatives, helping him find a short-term rental, contributing toward an Airbnb, assisting him with job applications, and lending money for a security deposit on a smaller apartment. He insisted that moving in with me was the only viable solution and claimed it would only be temporary, a couple of weeks at most, until he found a job. When I refused, he became upset. He accused me of being selfish, unsupportive, and uncaring. He said that a real brother would help in a time of crisis and implied that I was prioritizing my comfort over family. I tried to explain that my refusal was not about abandoning him, but about maintaining stability in my own life. I reminded him that I had already helped him in ways that did not require him moving in, but he dismissed these efforts as insufficient. Over the next week, David began pressuring me more aggressively. He called multiple times a day, sometimes showing up unannounced at my apartment, claiming he had no other options. Each time, I reiterated that he could not move in and that I was still willing to help in other ways. He reacted angrily, accusing me of turning my back on him and our family. He also brought up past occasions when I had temporarily stayed with him during college, implying that I owed him the same consideration now. I reminded him that my circumstances were different, but he said that didn't matter. The situation became more stressful when other family members got involved. Some relatives told me I should just let him stay and that family always comes first. Others privately agreed that my concerns were valid, saying that having him live with me would likely create tension, disrupt my routines, and put me in a difficult financial situation. The mixed opinions made me feel guilty, and I started second-guessing my decision, even though I knew my reasons were valid. David eventually found a friend willing to let him stay temporarily, but he continues to message me frequently, complaining about how stressful his situation is and implying that I could have made it easier by letting him move in. I continue to offer advice, financial support within my limits, and help with applications for apartments and jobs, but he seems dissatisfied with any solution that doesn't involve living with me. I also feel that the constant pressure and guilt tripping have negatively affected my mental health and caused tension in my own household. I want to help my brother and maintain a relationship, but I also have responsibilities and boundaries I cannot ignore. Allowing him to move in would compromise my financial stability, personal space, and daily routines. I have tried to communicate that my refusal is about practicality and long-term well-being for both of us, but he and some family members view it as selfish and uncaring. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother move in with me after he lost his job and his apartment, even though it has caused tension and hurt feelings. I feel like I'm trying to help in ways that are responsible, sustainable, and safe for both of us. But he and some family members see my actions as selfish. I want to maintain my relationship with him and support him through this difficult time without compromising my own stability. But I am unsure if setting this boundary makes me the villain. AITA for refusing to help my sister move after she repeatedly insulted me over the years. I, 28F, have always been the responsible sibling in my family. My sister, Maddie, 25F, well, she's always had a knack for making life more dramatic than necessary. Growing up, our parents tried to treat us equally, but Maddie and I were very different. I was studious, quiet, and focused on my goals, while she was outspoken, often impulsive, and liked being the center of attention. I tried to be supportive of her, but over time, the differences created tension. A few years ago, Maddie went through a rough breakup. I was there for her, listening to her vent and helping her pack her things when she moved to a new apartment. But she had a habit of throwing little digs at me. For example, she would say things like, "Of course you plan your whole life while I'm still figuring mine out," or, "You're so perfect, it must be exhausting being you." I always brushed it off as her coping mechanism, but it hurt more than I let on. The situation escalated when we were both in our mid-20s. I had been saving for years to move into a small condo downtown, and Maddie decided to visit and criticize my choices. She said things like, "You're really going to live here? It's tiny and boring. And you think money equals happiness, don't you?" I tried to explain that I liked the place and it worked for my lifestyle, but she wouldn't let it go. After that, I noticed that our interactions were becoming more draining. Every time she visited, it seemed like she had a critique or a subtle insult ready. Fast forward to now. Maddie called me 2 weeks ago and told me she had bought a new apartment and needed help moving. I reminded her that I was very busy with work and personal commitments. She responded by guilt-tripping me, saying, "I can't believe you'd leave me to do this alone. I've helped you move so many times. Don't you care about me?" I reminded her that while I had helped in the past, she had also said hurtful things over the years and that I wasn't comfortable dropping everything to help her. She got upset, and the conversation ended abruptly. A few days later, my parents called me. They were angry that I hadn't offered to help Maddie, saying that family is supposed to support each other. I explained the history, including the comments and insults, but they said I was overreacting and being petty. They said that helping her move was a small gesture of goodwill, and I was making mountains out of molehills. I tried to explain that it wasn't just about the move, that it was about repeated behavior over years that I didn't want to enable. Maddie found out that I hadn't helped, and she started posting passive-aggressive messages on social media. She wrote things like, "Some people are only around when it's convenient for them," and tagged our parents. My parents called me again, frustrated, saying I was hurting family harmony and that Maddie had been through a stressful time. I felt guilty at first, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that helping her would not resolve anything. If anything, it would likely give her another chance to insult or demean me while I was working hard to lift heavy furniture and boxes. I've considered compromise. I suggested hiring movers and splitting the cost, which would help her move without me being personally involved. She refused and said that it wasn't the same as me helping her. My parents are still upset, and Maddie hasn't spoken to me directly since she moved. Our relationship is tense, and I keep wondering if I've gone too far. I feel like I'm finally standing up for myself, but I also feel lonely because I've always valued family closeness, and this feels like a major rupture. To add more context, this isn't a one-off incident. Over the years, Maddie has made several comments that made me question her respect for me. For instance, she has mocked my career choices, criticized my relationships, and made passive-aggressive remarks whenever I share achievements or successes. While I understand everyone has flaws and families have disagreements, the pattern has been consistent, and it's emotionally exhausting. I've tried setting boundaries before, but Maddie tends to interpret boundaries as rejection. Even when I politely decline invitations because of work or self-care, she frames it as me not caring enough. This has caused me to tiptoe around my own life to avoid conflict, but recently I realized that living like that is unsustainable. Saying no to helping her move felt like a necessary step in protecting my mental health. I know some people might say I should just help because it's a one-time thing, but I also recognize that past behavior matters. I am not a stranger to kindness, but I do not feel obligated to put myself in situations where I expect to be demeaned or unappreciated. My parents' reaction, calling me selfish, has made me question whether my boundaries are unreasonable, but I also recognize that this tension has been building for years. So, AITA for refusing to help my sister move after years of subtle insults and a strained relationship. I know families often pull together during stressful times, but I also know that my mental well-being matters. I don't want to be remembered as someone who abandoned family, but I also don't want to continue a cycle of enabling hurtful behavior just for the sake of appearances. I feel conflicted because while I know I am standing up for myself, the backlash from my parents and the silent treatment from Maddie is heavy. I'm torn between wanting to be the good sister and protecting myself from further emotional harm. I guess I'm looking for a perspective outside my family to see if refusing to help in this context is truly selfish or reasonable. I just don't know if setting this boundary now is too harsh or if it's about time I stop putting myself last for someone who has repeatedly disrespected me. Has anyone else dealt with a family member who constantly tests boundaries but still expects unquestioned support? How do you balance self-care with familial obligations without feeling like the bad person? AITA? AITA for refusing to let my friend stay with me after she got kicked out, even though she keeps claiming I'm her only option. I, 30F, have a close friend, Rachel, 29F, who I've known since college. We've had a good friendship over the years, but she has always had some instability in her life, frequent moves, rocky jobs, and tumultuous relationships. I have a stable job as a project manager, live in a 2-bedroom apartment in the city, and have established a consistent routine. I enjoy my space and value the stability I've worked hard to maintain. About 2 weeks ago, Rachel called me in a panic. She had just been kicked out of her apartment due to issues with her landlord and was suddenly without a place to stay. She asked if she could move in with me temporarily until she got back on her feet. Initially, I told her I might be able to help for a night or two, but I made it clear that I couldn't accommodate her long-term because of space constraints and my work schedule. She seemed to understand, but then she started insisting that I let her stay for longer. I explained that my apartment isn't that big, I work long hours, and I already have a roommate who has her own schedule and boundaries. I also pointed out that I have responsibilities outside of work, including volunteering commitments and maintaining my home. I told Rachel that I could help her look for temporary options like a short-term Airbnb, staying with other friends, or even contacting local housing services, but she dismissed all of these suggestions, saying they were inconvenient, too expensive, or not safe enough. She insisted that staying with me was the only viable option. I offered compromises. I suggested she stay for 2 nights while I researched options, or that we could split the stay in alternating nights with another friend who has a guest room. She refused everything, insisting that any option other than moving in immediately would be too stressful and that I was being uncaring. She even started hinting that if I didn't help her, she might have to stay on the streets, which I found emotionally manipulative. The next day, she showed up at my apartment unannounced with a suitcase, saying she was staying for now, until I figured things out. I was taken aback and told her that this wasn't acceptable because I hadn't agreed to a long-term stay. She argued that since she was in crisis, I had a moral obligation to let her in. I explained that while I care about her and want to help, forcing her to move in would create a stressful environment for both of us and could impact my work and personal life. Rachel became angry and started accusing me of not being a good friend, saying that I was prioritizing my comfort over her well-being. She also reminded me of past times I had lent her money or helped her move, implying that these favors obligated me to take her in now. I try to clarify that helping financially or assisting with moves is very different from allowing someone to live in my apartment indefinitely, especially when it interferes with my daily life and responsibilities. Since then, Rachel has been sending constant messages, calling repeatedly, and even showing up at my workplace. She keeps framing my refusal as a moral failing, claiming that I'm abandoning her in her time of need. I've stuck to my boundaries, reiterating that I can help in practical ways, such as helping her find temporary accommodations, covering part of short-term rental, or assisting with job searches and paperwork. She dismisses all of it, insisting that nothing is as good as living with me. My roommate is supportive of my decision, as she has her own routines and does not want an unplanned guest for an extended period. She says that having Rachel stay indefinitely would create tension and disrupt her own work and personal life. My family has mixed opinions. Some say I should step up for a friend in need because we've been close for years, while others agree that I am justified in maintaining my household. Boundaries. I feel torn because I want to support Rachel emotionally and practically, but I also have to consider my own well-being. Having her live with me for an unknown duration would be stressful, and I worry it could damage our friendship long-term if resentment builds on either side. I also feel that her expectations are unreasonable. She's treating my home as a fallback solution without regard for my own responsibilities and boundaries. I've tried repeatedly to compromise, offer assistance, and provide alternatives that do not involve her moving in, but she refuses to accept any option other than living with me. She claims that my refusal proves I don't care about her, which hurts because I genuinely do. I am concerned that by standing firm, I might lose her as a friend, but I also know that giving in would likely create stress, resentment, and potentially a toxic living situation. So, AITA for refusing to let my friend stay with me indefinitely after she got kicked out of her apartment, even though she insists I am her only option and repeatedly frames my refusal as a betrayal. AITA for standing up to my sister at my own wedding and causing a huge family rift. I, 32F, have always been close with my younger sister, Lily, 28F. We grew up in a family that, to be blunt, thrived on drama and oversharing, but despite that, Lily and I had a bond that I thought was unshakable. We shared clothes, secrets, and even boyfriends for a while in our teenage years. As adults, our relationship had its normal ups and downs, but I always considered her my confidant. While I got engaged to my fiancé, Daniel, 34M, Lily seemed genuinely happy. I thought she would be my maid of honor, and for a while, that seemed to be the plan. But as the wedding planning progressed, I started noticing small things that made me uneasy. Lily began inserting herself into decisions that weren't hers to make, from choosing floral arrangements to suggesting a complete redo of my seating chart. I initially shrugged it off as sisterly excitement. The real issue started when I shared the guest list with her. I had invited my work colleagues, a few family friends, and distant relatives. Lily immediately reacted negatively, claiming that several of my cousins shouldn't be there and that I needed to invite more people who actually matter to the family. I tried to explain that the list was already complicated and that Daniel and I were trying to keep the wedding manageable, but she wouldn't let it go. She said things like, "If you don't invite Aunt Margaret and her husband, I won't come, and this is going to be a disaster without Uncle Robert." At first, I thought she was joking, but it quickly became clear she was serious. Things escalated when it came to the bridal party. I had asked my closest friends and family, including Lily, to stand by me. But she started complaining that the dresses I chose weren't flattering, that my friends weren't properly classy, and even suggested she should be the one planning my bachelorette party instead of my best friend. I tried to set boundaries, reminding her multiple times that the wedding was about me and Daniel. Not her, but she ignored me. The breaking point came the day before the wedding. I was getting my hair and makeup done, and Lily cornered me in the hotel lobby. She had a long list of grievances, ranging from minor ones like the color of my bouquet to major ones like my choice of music for the reception. She kept saying things like, "You're making a huge mistake by doing this wedding your way," and "I can't believe Daniel is okay with all this." I calmly told her I appreciated her opinion, but Daniel and I had made our decisions and that she needed to respect that. She responded by screaming at me in front of several hotel staff and guests, saying that I was being selfish and that I didn't care about anyone but myself. I decided I couldn't let her behavior continue, so I told her that if she wanted to be part of my wedding, she needed to stop dictating everything and start respecting my choices. She didn't like that. She stormed out, saying she was going home and that she wouldn't attend. I was furious, but also sad. I tried calling her several times that night, but she didn't answer. The wedding itself was beautiful, but Lily was not there. Her absence was noticeable, and a few relatives made awkward comments, but Daniel and I focused on our day. When we returned from our honeymoon, the drama had not died down. Lily sent a long email accusing me of ruining our family and turning our parents against her. She refused to speak to me in person, and my parents, who had tried to remain neutral, became frustrated with both of us. A few weeks later, I found out that Lily had been telling mutual friends and family members that I had banished her from the wedding and treated her horribly for no reason. Some people reached out to me to check what happened, which made me feel like I had to defend myself. I tried explaining the situation calmly, emphasizing that I had repeatedly asked her to respect my decisions, but many people seemed to be taking her side. Lily has since cut off contact with me entirely. She doesn't respond to calls or texts, and she's made passive-aggressive posts on social media implying that I am controlling and self-centered. My parents are upset because our family gatherings are now tense, and I feel guilty even though I think I handled things the best I could under the circumstances. I've reflected on everything multiple times, and I honestly believe I was reasonable. I told her repeatedly that the wedding was my and Daniel's day, not hers, and that her behavior was crossing boundaries. I understand family dynamics are complicated, but I also feel that her actions were extreme and that I had every right to enforce boundaries. So, AITA for standing my ground with my sister at my wedding, even though it led to her not attending and created ongoing family tension. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for losing my temper at my sister during our family reunion and possibly ruining our relationship. This all started last summer when my extended family decided to have a reunion at my parents' lake house. I was excited because it had been a few years since everyone had been together, and I wanted this to be a fun, relaxing weekend for my kids and me. My sister, Laura, was also coming with her husband and their 2 teenage kids. Historically, Laura and I have had a somewhat strained relationship. We grew up in the same house, but there was always competition between us, grades, sports, achievements. And while we've grown older and try to let go of those rivalries, old habits die hard. The first day went fairly well. We all arrived, settled in, and enjoyed dinner on the deck overlooking the lake. My kids and Laura's kids played together nicely, and for a moment, I felt like maybe this reunion could actually be pleasant. That changed on the second day. Laura and her family were up early, which is normal, but she immediately started commenting on every little thing my kids did. She criticized my eldest for being too loud while they were playing on the dock and rolled her eyes when my youngest tried to climb a tree. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe she was just trying to be helpful, but it started to pile up. Things escalated during the morning hike. We were walking along a trail near the lake, and my youngest, who is small for her age, struggled with a steep incline. Laura made a comment about how kids these days are so weak and pampered, which made me snap. I told her that my child was doing her best and that she didn't need commentary from someone who obviously thinks she's perfect. Laura laughed it off and said I was overreacting, but the tension was set. After lunch, we went to rent kayaks. Laura's kids went first, and Laura insisted on giving them a lesson before they got on the water. Meanwhile, my kids were eager to try it themselves. I told Laura they were fine without a lesson, but she continued to lecture them about paddling and safety. I finally lost my patience and loudly said that she was treating my children like incompetents, and I didn't appreciate it. The rest of the family looked uncomfortable, but Laura just shrugged and said, "I'm just trying to help." The breaking point came in the evening during a family dinner. My mother had prepared a huge meal, and we were all sitting around the table. Laura made a passing comment about how she can't understand why people let their kids watch so much TV, clearly referring to my eldest, who had spent a few minutes playing a game on a tablet earlier in the day. I reacted immediately, saying that my parenting choices were none of her business and that she shouldn't judge my children. Laura started raising her voice, insisting she was just giving advice, and it turned into a full-blown argument. In the heat of the moment, I said things I regret. I told her that she was controlling, judgmental, and always trying to make me feel inferior. I even brought up things from our childhood that I had avoided for years, things that hurt both of us. Laura yelled back, and our parents had to intervene. My husband tried to calm me down, and eventually I walked away, but the damage was done. The rest of the evening was awkward. My kids were upset because they had witnessed the fight, and Laura's kids were quiet and withdrawn. The next morning, Laura and I didn't speak. I tried to apologize for raising my voice, but explained that I felt attacked by her constant criticism. She said she was just trying to be helpful, but it didn't feel like an apology. The rest of the family tried to mediate, suggesting we both let it go, but I can't help feeling that Laura's behavior was disrespectful and overstepped boundaries. Since then, Laura has been distant, only giving short replies when I text her. My parents keep asking me to call and apologize properly, but I feel like I did apologize in my own way, and that she also needs to acknowledge her role in the conflict. Part of me feels guilty for losing my temper and bringing up old grievances, but another part of me feels like I was pushed too far and that I have a right to defend my children and myself. I'm now debating whether I should send a longer, more formal apology or give her space and hope she reaches out first. I also worry that our relationship may never be the same, and I feel torn between standing my ground and trying to mend things for the sake of family harmony. I want to be fair and honest in assessing my actions, which is why I'm here. So, AITA for losing my temper at my sister during the reunion, even though she had been criticizing my children and me all day, I know I could have handled it more calmly. But I also feel that she provoked me repeatedly. I want to understand whether I really crossed a line or if she should have been more mindful of her comments. My goal is not to win an argument, but to figure out if I acted in a way that justifies her anger and distance. Has anyone else experienced a situation where a sibling's constant judgment pushed you to an emotional breaking point? How do you navigate repairing relationships after a heated confrontation like this, especially when children are involved and emotions run high? I'm open to honest feedback and willing to hear if I was wrong, even partially because I don't want to lose my sister over something that might be salvageable. This whole incident has left me emotionally drained, and I find myself replaying every comment and counter-comment, wondering if I should have stayed silent, whether I should have left the reunion early, or if there was a better way to set boundaries without causing a scene. I know family dynamics are complicated, but I want to act in a way that respects everyone's feelings, including my own. I appreciate any perspective on whether my reaction was justified or if I truly was in the wrong. I want to learn from this and hopefully rebuild a relationship with my sister, but I also need to understand where I stand ethically in this conflict. AITA for refusing to let my fiancé's brother move in with us after he lost his job. I, 32F, have been engaged to my fiancé, Mark, 34M, for about 2 years. We have a stable life together. Both of us work full-time, we own a modest 2-bedroom apartment, and we are planning for the future, including saving for a bigger place and eventually starting a family. I love Mark and his family, but over the years I've noticed that his younger brother, Kevin, 29M, tends to be reckless with money, avoids long-term planning, and can be very dependent on others when things go wrong. About 3 weeks ago, Kevin lost his job. He had been working at a small local business that recently went under. Around the same time, he also lost his apartment because he had fallen behind on rent. He called Mark, panicked, and asked if he could move in with us temporarily while he got back on his feet. Initially, Mark was supportive of the idea, saying it would be just a week or two until Kevin could figure something out. I immediately felt uncomfortable. Our apartment is small, and adding another adult would create strain, not only on space but also on our daily routines. Kevin has a history of staying with people for temporary periods that end up lasting months, and I did not want to risk our living situation being disrupted. I explained to Mark that I could not have Kevin move in and offered alternative ways to help him, assisting in finding a short-term rental or sublet, contributing to temporary housing like an Airbnb, helping with job applications, and offering some financial support for essentials. Mark initially argued that we should help family and that Kevin had nowhere else to go. He insisted that it was only temporary and that he would help manage the situation so it wouldn't be disruptive. I said that I understood wanting to help, but I was not comfortable with having Kevin live with us under any circumstances. I reminded Mark that I was not opposed to supporting his brother, just that living together was not an option. When I refused, Mark became frustrated. He said I was being selfish and unsupportive, implying that I didn't care about his family. He suggested that refusing to let Kevin stay with us was turning my back on someone in need. I tried to explain that my concerns were practical, not personal. Our apartment is small, our routines are busy, and having Kevin live with us could create conflict or strain our relationship. I also reminded him that I had already offered multiple ways to help that did not involve cohabitation. Over the next few days, Kevin began pressuring me indirectly as well. He sent texts implying that I was making things harder for him and questioning whether our relationship with Mark's family was genuine. He also started calling multiple times a day, asking for updates on whether we would change our minds. I found myself feeling guilty, anxious, and pressured, even though I was sticking to reasonable boundaries. The situation has caused tension between Mark and me. He feels that I am being overly rigid and unsympathetic, while I feel that he is not respecting my boundaries or considering the practical implications of having Kevin move in. We've argued multiple times about it, and it has started to affect our communication on other topics. Mark has also told some family members that I am refusing to help his brother, which has resulted in awkward conversations with relatives who are questioning my judgment. Kevin eventually found a friend willing to let him stay temporarily, but he continues to reach out frequently, venting about his situation and implying that I could have helped more. I continue to provide advice, assist with job applications, and offer limited financial support for temporary expenses, but he is dissatisfied with anything that does not involve moving in. I am struggling because I want to help Kevin and maintain a good relationship with Mark and his family, but I also need to protect my living space, routines, and mental health. Allowing him to move in would create long-term stress, disrupt our household, and potentially damage my relationship with Mark if issues arise. I feel that I have tried to compromise by offering alternative forms of support, but Kevin and some family members interpret this as refusal to help. So, AITA for refusing to let my fiancé's brother move in after he lost his job and apartment. Even though he and some family members view me as unsupportive, I want to provide help in ways that are sustainable and safe for everyone involved. But my decision has caused tension, guilt, and ongoing conflict in my relationship and family dynamics. I am unsure whether setting this boundary makes me the villain or if I am simply protecting my home and well-being responsibly. AITA for refusing to let my boyfriend stay with me after he got evicted. Even though he says I'm the only person he can turn to, I, 32F, live in a one-bedroom apartment in the city with my 2 cats and a relatively quiet lifestyle. I work full-time as a software engineer and have a strict routine that allows me to manage my job and personal life efficiently. My boyfriend, Jason, 33M, recently went through a rough patch. He was living with roommates who were irresponsible with rent, and after a dispute with his landlord, he was evicted. A few days ago, he called me, panicked, and asked if he could move in with me while he sorts things out. I was caught off guard. I have always been supportive of Jason, and we've had a good relationship, but I also value my personal space and stability. I explained that my apartment is small, I work long hours, and I already have responsibilities with my cats and household chores. I offered that he could stay for one night while he figured something out, but I made it clear that I could not accommodate a long-term arrangement. He insisted that I must be able to help because he has nowhere else to go. I asked if he could reach out to friends, family, or temporary housing services, but he said those options were not viable or too much trouble. He argued that he shouldn't have to impose on anyone else when he could stay with me. I explained that I was happy to help in practical ways, like helping him find an Airbnb, assisting with applications for short-term rentals, or even helping cover a night or two of lodging, but he dismissed all of these solutions. Jason then started to pressure me emotionally, saying that if I loved him, I would make space for him. He reminded me of past favors I've done, including covering for him financially or helping him move apartments, implying that those past instances obligate me to take him in now. I explained that helping with errands or financial assistance is different from letting someone move into a small one-bedroom apartment, which would significantly disrupt my work and personal life. He argued that one-bedroom apartments are small and affordable, so it shouldn't be a big deal. He insisted that I could adjust my schedule to accommodate him, that the cats could handle it, and that he would make himself as unobtrusive as possible. I tried to emphasize that living together under these conditions, especially while he's stressed and potentially emotional from being evicted, would create tension and stress for both of us. When I refused to let him stay long-term, he became upset and started sending repeated texts and calls. He framed my refusal as a lack of care, saying that I was prioritizing my comfort over his immediate needs. He even suggested that if I really loved him, I would make sacrifices, which made me feel guilty. Friends who know us have mixed opinions. Some say I should step up for my boyfriend because he's in crisis, while others agree that my refusal is reasonable given the circumstances and my living situation. I tried to compromise. I told him he could stay for one night, that I could help him move his things temporarily, and that I could assist in finding affordable temporary housing. He dismissed all alternatives, insisting that staying with me is the only solution and accusing me of being selfish and uncaring. He also claimed that any delay in helping him would make him feel abandoned. I am torn because I genuinely care about Jason and want to support him during this difficult time. I feel like my boundaries are reasonable, but he insists that my refusal is a betrayal. I'm also concerned about the impact on my cats, my work, and my mental health if I were to allow him to move in indefinitely. My schedule is demanding, and having someone else in my small apartment would add stress that I'm not prepared to handle right now. Alex, a close friend, suggested that I could offer a hybrid solution, letting Jason stay for a night or two while actively helping him secure temporary housing. I've communicated this to Jason, but he sees it as too little, too late, and continues to pressure me. I also worry that if I give in, it will set a precedent where he expects me to accommodate him in similar situations repeatedly, which could strain our relationship further. So, AITA for refusing to let my boyfriend stay in my apartment indefinitely after he got evicted, even though he claims I'm the only person he can turn to and frames my refusal as a lack of love and support. AITA for refusing to let my younger sister live with me after she lost her apartment. I, 32F, have always been the responsible one in my family. I've had a stable job in marketing for over a decade, own my condo in the city, and generally keep a pretty structured life. My younger sister, Lila, 27F, has always been more free-spirited. She's creative, spontaneous, and frankly, a little unreliable. She's had a string of odd jobs over the years, often hopping from one city to another. I've always admired her energy, but I've also felt that I needed boundaries to protect my own life. A few weeks ago, Lila called me in tears. She had been evicted from her apartment because her roommate stopped paying rent and she couldn't cover the full amount herself. She had nowhere to go and asked if she could stay with me for a while until she got back on her feet. I immediately felt torn. On one hand, she's my sister and I didn't want her to be homeless. On the other hand, I've always maintained my condo as my personal space, and the thought of someone else moving in indefinitely felt overwhelming. My life is already busy, and I work from home most days, so privacy is crucial. I try to explain this to her. I said that while I cared about her, I wasn't in a position to offer long-term housing. I suggested a few alternatives, like short-term rentals, staying with a friend, or even contacting local housing assistance programs. She didn't take it well. She got very emotional and accused me of not caring about her. She said I was selfish for refusing to help her when she really needed it. After that conversation, I thought I could compromise by offering to let her stay for a night or two while she arranged something more permanent. But even that turned into an argument. Lila said that 1 or 2 nights wouldn't solve her problem and that I was avoiding responsibility. I told her I wanted to help in other ways, like helping her search for apartments or assisting with job applications. But she was insistent that what she needed was a place to stay. Eventually, she left angrily, saying she would figure it out on her own, but implying that I'd regret not helping her. Since then, Our relationship has been tense. My parents have gotten involved. They've told me that I should just let her move in temporarily because it's family, and that I'm overreacting. My friends, however, support me and say I have every right to say no. I've been feeling guilty constantly, though, because I don't want to be the bad sister. I also worry about the long-term implications. If she moves in, I feel like it could become permanent, and I don't know how I would enforce boundaries without causing a major conflict. Here's why I drew the line. My condo is a small one-bedroom. I have a dog that doesn't do well with strangers. I also have a tight work schedule and strict routines that help me manage stress. I know from past experiences with friends who've temporarily moved in that to constrain relationships. I fear that allowing her to move in could damage not only my mental health, but also my career. I tried explaining this to Lila, but she insists I'm being heartless. I've also realized that if I allow her to move in, I might set a precedent where she comes to me every time she faces a crisis. She has a pattern of instability, and while I want to support her emotionally, I feel that enabling her by providing housing might not actually help her become more independent. I suggested alternative support, offering financial advice, helping her budget, reviewing apartment listings, or even giving her some emergency funds. But she doesn't want guidance. She wants a physical space to stay. In the past, I've let her stay for a weekend or two when she was traveling between jobs or cities, and it went fine. But this situation feels different. She has no set timeline for leaving, and I know she tends to linger in situations longer than intended. I'm worried about the long-term effect on our relationship if I agree to have her stay indefinitely, as well as the immediate effect on my personal space and peace of mind. My parents have been sending me messages almost daily, asking why I haven't helped her yet, and suggesting that I consider her feelings more. Lila herself has sent a few texts implying that I don't love her. I haven't responded to all of them because I don't want to escalate the tension, but I can feel the strain. I still want to help her, just in ways that don't compromise my stability. I thought about letting her stay, but setting strict boundaries. A fixed period, like a week, specific rules for sharing space, and expectations that she actively search for a new place. But even that feels like a lot of negotiation that could easily fail, given her track record. I don't want to create a hostile environment for both of us. I also considered having her stay in a nearby Airbnb, and I offered to pay part of it, but she rejected the idea outright, saying it wasn't helping her and that I was trying to avoid responsibility again. So now I'm stuck. I feel guilty and anxious, but I also feel justified in protecting my life and home. I love my sister, and I want to support her, but I feel that allowing her to move in could have serious consequences for both of us. I've been questioning if I'm being too rigid, too selfish, or if I'm justified in drawing this boundary. AITA for refusing to let her live with me after her eviction, even temporarily beyond a night or two. AITA for refusing to let my sister live with me after she lost her job and her house. So I, 32F, have always been the responsible one in my family. I have a stable job as a software engineer, a small but comfortable apartment in the city, and I live by a fairly strict set of rules that I find necessary for my mental well-being. My younger sister, Emily, 28F, has always been a bit more free-spirited, and honestly, she's never really been great with money or planning ahead. She's had a string of jobs that never lasted more than a year or two, and she's moved apartments so frequently that I can't even remember half of the places she's lived. About 2 weeks ago, Emily called me in tears. She had lost her job as a barista due to downsizing, and on top of that, her landlord had decided to sell the building she was living in, which meant she had to be out within a month. She begged me to let her stay at my apartment while she figured things out, claiming she had no one else to turn to. I'll be honest, my first reaction was panic. My apartment is only a 2-bedroom, and the spare room is currently my home office. I can't really work from home properly if someone else is living here, especially someone who doesn't respect boundaries. But I tried to reason with her. I said I could help her look for a new place, maybe help her with references or budgeting, but I couldn't just let her move in. She got really emotional, accusing me of being selfish and unsympathetic, and that's when I realized how deep this divide might go. She argued that she had nowhere else to go and that it would only be temporary. She said she'd pay rent, contribute to groceries, and keep her distance. I told her I didn't doubt she would try to be considerate, but I also knew from past experience that her temporary situations tend to drag on for months or even years. Plus, I need a stable environment for my mental health. I've been living alone for years, and it suits me. Having someone else in my space, even family, is extremely stressful for me. I tried to explain all of this calmly, but Emily interpreted it as me saying she was a burden. The argument escalated over text, then over the phone, and she eventually showed up at my apartment unannounced. She was carrying a suitcase and was clearly expecting me to just give in. I stood my ground, and she ended up storming out after a tense confrontation. She's been avoiding me since then, and our family is now involved. My parents are furious with me, saying I should have helped her because family comes first. They think I'm heartless for refusing to let her stay. Some of my friends are siding with Emily too, saying that a sister in need should be supported, and I'm starting to feel like maybe I overreacted. However, I also have to consider my own limits. In the past, I've let friends or family stay with me, and it's always ended badly. People don't follow the rules, or they overstay their welcome, and I end up stressed and resentful. I try to offer other forms of support, helping her search for a new apartment, lending some money for a deposit, and even connecting her with local resources, but apparently, that's not enough for my family. I guess my main question is, am I really being selfish here? I do feel bad about Emily's situation, and I understand that she's vulnerable right now. But I also know that if I let her move in, it will likely cause tension and stress for both of us. I have my own boundaries and responsibilities, and I've always been someone who thinks carefully before making big decisions like letting someone live with me. My sister, on the other hand, believes that family should come first and that I owe her a safe place to stay, even if it's inconvenient. Our parents are pressuring me heavily, and even my closest friends are questioning my morality. I just can't shake the feeling that bending this rule would compromise my mental health and the stability I've worked so hard to maintain. To add another layer, Emily has a tendency to borrow money and not pay it back. My parents know this, and they keep reminding me that if I help her, she might end up relying on me for far longer than intended. This is exactly what I'm worried about. I suggested we draw up a timeline or rules for her stay, but she refused, saying it would be humiliating. Now, there's this ongoing family tension. Every time I bring up my own plans or schedule, my parents guilt trip me, and Emily continues to make passive-aggressive comments about my selfishness. Even my friends are subtly shaming me, suggesting that I should step up for family in times of need. The more I try to explain my perspective, the more defensive everyone gets, and I feel like I'm being painted as the villain despite trying to offer alternative forms of help. I don't know if I'm overthinking this, but I really value my personal space and independence. I've lived alone for years and have invested a lot into creating a stable and calm environment, which I know is crucial for my mental health and productivity. Having Emily here, even temporarily, seems like a recipe for conflict, stress, and possibly long-term strain on our relationship. I'm stuck between my desire to help and my need to maintain boundaries. I don't want to ruin my relationship with my sister, but I also can't ignore my own limits. Part of me thinks that sometimes saying no is necessary, even when it's uncomfortable, but part of me worries that my family and friends are right and that I'm failing to show compassion when it's most needed. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister stay with me after she lost her job and housing? Am I being unreasonable for prioritizing my boundaries over her immediate needs? Or are my concerns about potential long-term issues and my mental health valid reasons to say no? I genuinely tried to help in other ways, but it seems like no form of assistance is acceptable to anyone but letting her move in. I'm afraid that if I relent, it will set a precedent that I can't undo, and I'll be dealing with the consequences for years. But I also feel awful about the way things have turned out and the guilt that keeps piling on from my family and friends. I'm caught between what I feel is responsible and what others think is compassionate, and I don't know how to navigate this without causing further damage to my relationship with Emily and my family. AITA for refusing to let my sister and her kids move in with me after her divorce. I, 37F, have a younger sister, Rachel, 33F, who has always been a bit impulsive and struggles with long-term planning. Growing up, she was the free-spirited sibling, while I was more cautious and financially responsible. Despite our differences, we've always been close, and I've tried to support her where I can. I have a stable life now, a full-time job, a mortgage on a 3-bedroom house, and 2 cats. I budget carefully, maintain an emergency fund, and generally plan ahead to avoid financial stress. About 2 months ago, Rachel got divorced. She was married for 8 years, and her ex-husband was controlling and financially irresponsible. After the divorce, she ended up with full custody of her 2 kids, Sophie, 7F, and Liam, 5M, but was left with significant debt and limited savings. She had been renting a small apartment and quickly fell behind on rent after her ex stopped paying his share of expenses. Eventually, she was evicted and called me in desperation, asking if she could move in with me temporarily until she got back on her feet. At first, I was sympathetic. I knew she was in a tough spot, and I wanted to help, but I immediately realized that letting her and her children move in would be extremely difficult for several reasons. My house is not large. It's a 3-bedroom, and I use the 3rd room as a home office and storage. I also have pets, a strict budget, and a daily routine that I rely on for my mental health. Adding 3 people to the household, even temporarily, would be a huge disruption. I told Rachel I could not have her and the kids move in long term, but I offered other forms of support. I suggested helping her find a short-term rental or a friend willing to host temporarily, contributing to a security deposit for a new apartment, helping her budget and search for affordable housing, and assisting with job applications to get her finances back on track. She immediately pushed back, insisting that moving in with me was the only viable solution. She assured me it would only be temporary, a month or 2 at most, and that she would leave as soon as she secured stable housing. I explained that my refusal was not about not wanting to help, but about practicality. I have my own financial responsibilities, space limitations, and routines that I cannot compromise. I also explained that living together under stressful circumstances could create tension, affect my mental health, and potentially harm our relationship. Rachel became upset, saying I was turning my back on family, and that a real sister would do whatever it takes to help. She suggested that I was being selfish and prioritizing my comfort over her and the children's well-being. Over the next week, Rachel continued to pressure me. She called multiple times a day, sometimes while I was at work, sending long messages about how dire her situation was and implying that I could fix things by letting her move in. I tried to reiterate that I was willing to help in other ways and reminded her of all the options I'd offered. She dismissed them all and insisted that nothing else would work, saying that short-term rentals were too expensive and staying with friends was not an option because she felt uncomfortable imposing on others. The situation has caused a lot of tension in my household. My own stress levels increased, and I began to feel anxious every time my phone rang. I also realized that having her move in, even temporarily, would likely extend beyond the month or 2 she promised, as she has no stable income, mounting debt, and children who require constant attention. I wanted to help her succeed, but I knew that compromising my own living situation would create resentment and could harm our relationship in the long run. Family members have also weighed in. Some say I should just make the sacrifice, and that family comes first, while others agree that my concerns are valid and that having her move in could create long-term stress and conflict. I feel guilty because I love my sister and want to help, but I also know that my decision is responsible and necessary for my own well-being. Eventually, Rachel found a friend who agreed to let her stay temporarily, but she still reaches out constantly for advice, emotional support, and financial guidance. I continue to help her in those ways, but she has made it clear that she is disappointed I would not let her live with me. I worry that my refusal has damaged our relationship, even though I have tried to support her in all other ways. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister and her children move in after her divorce, even though she sees it as abandonment. I feel like I am helping her in sustainable and safe ways without compromising my own stability, but my decision has caused tension, guilt, and family criticism. I want to maintain our relationship and support her through this difficult time, but I also need to protect my home, finances, and mental health. I am unsure if setting this boundary makes me the villain. AITA for refusing to help my sister after she refused to respect my boundaries for years. I, 32F, have always been the responsible one in my family. My younger sister, Lily, 28F, has a history of making impulsive decisions and expecting everyone else to clean up her messes. Growing up, I was the one doing extra chores, helping with her homework, and mediating arguments she started. I loved her, of course, but it set a precedent. I became her emotional and practical safety net, and she started to expect it as a given. Fast forward to adulthood. I live in a small city and work a demanding job as a project manager. I've been trying to establish my own independence and financial stability. Lily, on the other hand, bounced between jobs, lived with different friends, and was always short on rent. She would call me constantly, asking for rides, money, or help moving. I helped when I could, but I started setting boundaries. I told her I couldn't always give her money or drop everything for her. She didn't take it well. 2 years ago, she moved to another state after a messy breakup. At first, I was glad she was trying to start fresh. She begged me to lend her money for the move, which I did, under the condition she'd pay me back in installments. She never did, and every time I brought it up, she'd get defensive or guilt-trip me. I eventually stopped asking. The major conflict started last month. I received a call from her crying hysterically. She had gotten into trouble with her landlord and was being evicted in a week. She begged me to fly there and help her move her things, or at least pay for a moving company. I had already committed to a big project at work and couldn't take time off. I told her I couldn't go, but I could help her look for a local service or a friend to assist. She accused me of abandoning her and called me selfish. I decided to be firm. I told her I couldn't afford to cover her moving expenses either. She started texting me all day, accusing me of being a bad sister and threatening to cut me out of her life. It's worth noting that this isn't the first time she has made ultimatums. It's her way of controlling people. I blocked her for a few days to avoid the constant messages. Her partner, who I had met once, called me and said I was cruel and needed to step up because family is supposed to help each other. I tried explaining that I have responsibilities too, and just because I can help sometimes doesn't mean I am obligated to bail her out every time she makes poor choices. He said I should feel guilty because she has nowhere else to turn. After I blocked her, I started getting calls from our parents. They told me I should be helping Lily because she is in crisis. I explained I helped her in the past, but I can't fix all her problems. They said I was being too rigid and unkind. I pointed out that my help in the past hasn't changed her behavior and that enforcing boundaries is sometimes an act of love. They didn't agree. A few days later, Lily posted on social media about how her heartless sister abandoned her during her eviction. Mutual friends messaged me, some asking why I wasn't helping, others defending my decision. I haven't responded publicly. I also noticed she started asking other people for help, which shows she has options, but I feel like the narrative she's spreading paints me as the villain. I realize some people might see my actions as cold, but I genuinely believe enabling her past behavior hasn't helped her. She has always had alternatives, friends, colleagues, social services, yet she consistently expects me to drop everything for her. I'm also worried that if I give in now, it will set a precedent where I am always expected to solve her crises. I'm conflicted because I love my sister and hate seeing her in distress, but I also need to protect my mental health and financial stability. I've considered helping in small ways, like researching rental assistance programs or local charities, but I refuse to put myself in a position where I sacrifice my own life for her mistakes. Now, my parents and some family friends are upset with me, and Lily hasn't spoken to me since. I'm worried I'm hurting her, but I also feel like I'm finally asserting the boundaries I've needed for years. I'm starting to question whether I'm overreacting or if I'm justified in this situation. So, AITA for refusing to help my sister when she got evicted after years of expecting me to fix all her problems? AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding after she humiliated me in front of our entire family? I, 32F, have always been the responsible one in my family. I have a stable career as a software engineer. I own my home, and I generally try to support my family whenever I can. My younger sister, Emma, 28F, on the other hand, has always been more carefree and impulsive. She tends to take risks without thinking about the consequences, and while I love her, this has caused friction between us over the years. A few months ago, Emma got engaged to her boyfriend, Mike, 30M. At first, I was genuinely happy for her. I started thinking about all the ways I could help, offering advice, helping with planning, even potentially helping with some costs if she needed it. However, during the first meeting about her wedding plans, things went south quickly. Emma and I were sitting with our parents discussing the guest list and budget. I suggested that perhaps she might want to limit the number of distant acquaintances on the list to keep costs reasonable. I also mentioned that hiring a local caterer she hadn't considered could save her a lot of money. Before I could finish, she interrupted me loudly, saying I was being cheap and that I clearly didn't understand wedding dreams. The conversation escalated quickly. Then it happened. Emma turned to our parents and said, in front of everyone, that I was always controlling and judgmental and that I never let anyone enjoy themselves. She claimed that I thought I was better than everyone else because I was more responsible and had my life together. I was completely shocked and embarrassed. Our parents tried to calm things down, but the damage was done. I felt humiliated in front of family members I barely knew, and it hurt deeply. After that incident, I told Emma I needed some space and would not be involved in the wedding planning until she could apologize. She didn't take it well. She sent me multiple messages saying I was overreacting, that I was holding a grudge for no reason, and that I was not supporting my own sister. Eventually, she started asking for help again, saying she needed advice on vendors, decorations, and even asked if I could help organize a portion of the wedding myself. I refused each time, stating that I needed an apology first. The week after, she called me while I was at work and left a voicemail saying she had made a plan for me to earn back my place in the wedding, including paying for a small but expensive part of the decorations. I was furious. Not only had she never apologized, but now she was attempting to dictate my participation with a financial obligation attached. I replied with a firm text. I would not be involved in any part of the wedding, period, until she addressed the humiliation she caused. Our parents got involved at this point. They called me and said that I was being unfair and that Emma was young and emotional and didn't mean what she said. They also told me that I was overreacting by refusing to help with the wedding, which they saw as a once-in-a-lifetime event. I tried explaining how it felt to be publicly shamed by my sister, but they seemed to minimize it, suggesting that I should just let it go for family harmony. I ended up hanging up, frustrated and hurt. Meanwhile, Emma continued sending passive-aggressive messages, some even to my friends, expressing her disappointment that I wasn't helping her and painting me as the mean sister who didn't care. Some of my friends advised me to just apologize and help, even though I felt I had done nothing wrong. I felt torn because I love my sister, but I also felt strongly that boundaries were necessary. Fast forward to 2 months later. The wedding is just weeks away. I still haven't received an apology. Emma recently called me to tell me she forgave me for being upset and that she hoped I would reconsider helping with the wedding. I explained that forgiveness doesn't mean the same thing as taking responsibility and apologizing for humiliating someone. She got defensive, saying I was being petty and that I never let her live her life. I've decided I will not attend the wedding unless she directly apologizes. I have not blocked her, and I am open to reconciliation, but I refuse to subject myself to further embarrassment. My parents are upset with me, saying I'm ruining the family dynamic and making the wedding less special for Emma. Some extended family members have also messaged me, subtly pressuring me to just be the bigger person. I understand that weddings are emotional events, but I also feel that publicly humiliating someone is not something to be brushed aside. I've always tried to support my family, and I've even gone out of my way to help Emma financially and emotionally in the past. I feel that refusing to participate in her wedding until she apologizes is a reasonable boundary, not an act of cruelty. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding after she humiliated me in front of the family? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.